that, right? We all seen somebody that fills a room, or we've observed somebody filling the room. Well, our next speaker has a little bit different take on that, and he's got a rare quality that is not present in so many people, but he expands a room. And I think that you're all in for a great treat. Kirk Bailey is the Chief Information Security Officer at the University of Washington. One heck of a presenter, and by the end of this conversation, he's going to feel like a friend. So, a treat for all of you to enjoy, and Kirk, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So, I'm an outsider. I know nothing about your business, or I didn't when I first started at the University of Washington. So, what you're going to get today from me, hopefully, is a short, sort of fun introduction to my views, my perspectives on and filter about your data and what you do. So it's different than the kind of way you think, hopefully, and it might stimulate some thinking and some conversation that we can have. I'm also aware that I stand between you and some hospitality, which I know you're all interested after a long, tiring day, so I'll at least try and make it entertaining. We can make it short if we need to. But I'd like to thank the UW advancement team for inviting me to be here. I really do enjoy working with them. As a matter of fact, the first day I came on campus, camped outside my door was Walt Dreyfus. He had heard that I had been hired, and he wanted to check in with me to see if I could offer any kind of advice that might help him ensure that his data was protected and that things were going well for the University of Washington. I was kind of surprised by it and pleased by it, and it was from that day I began to learn all about advancement and about the whole issue surrounding fundraising, all the issues surrounding fundraising and the complex business you're in. Walt has also been a personal advisor and a very healthy critic about how I needed to assimilate myself and my services into the University of Washington culture, so I owe Walt a debt of gratitude. So with that bit of seriousness, I don't feel so bad starting to throw out stuff that clearly looks like an unmedicated paranoid, which is what the university pays me to do. So usually what happens is I arrive at my quarterly meeting of other security professionals we host on the University of Washington campus. It's called the Agora, and it's usually 200 to 300 people in a large auditorium. I've had a duty or responsibility in that environment for the last 16 years to tell stories. I try to kick off the meeting with sort of a story that's pertinent, relevant, and hopefully valuable. I'm going to be trying to do that today to help express some concerns and perspectives that I want you folks to keep in mind as you start working with all of your data and your technology. First of all, the first observation I'd like to make, I keep chuckling. Every time I visit Walt or I talk with this team, I keep chuckling because you folks are social engineers of the first degree. That's what you folks do, you know. And the reason it's interesting to me is you do what criminals do. You separate people from their money. My job is to protect the university from criminals trying to separate people and the university dollars from themselves by being manipulated, and you folks are incredible manipulators. You use every conceivable little twist, tickle, and tease to get people to play off their guilt, their sense of charity, their vanity. I mean, I got a whole list of stuff there. The one I understood was deduction. Anyway, it's a marvelous thing. So I have to tell you, from my perspective, you are nothing more, oops, wrong way, you are nothing more than elite hackers. And because you're elite hackers, I try to approach the business understanding of how to protect your data when I'm invited into UW Advancement to try to understand your stuff from a hacker perspective. So, like all hackers, you should know that you are exactly like them and that you all love technology. You guys are just unbelievable with your technology, and it's getting faster and faster and more cluttered in your market space for technology. I go out and try to keep up with your market space, and it is almost impossible to do so. I just grabbed several of the different logos offline or online of different organizations that you folks are interested in buying and using. You guys are really excited about social media, all kinds of exciting platforms. I keep thinking that you guys are envisioning this sort of wild, madcap, viral donation process of some kind that's got all the people excited, you know, flash mob donation somewhere. I also see all kinds of strange new products, new programs, new services, all kinds of event management, event planning stuff, all kinds of cool little token systems for getting donation monies from your donors. It's just phenomenal. And one of the things I tried to do in preparation for coming out here to talk to you folks was to sort of find an example of a new product, a new vendor that's out there, to sort of point fingers at them. Then I realized it probably wasn't fair because I figured maybe one of those vendors might be here, so I decided I better not do that. So I'll tell you about my general vendor feeling. But I have to tell you that your market space for a security professional gives me the heebie-jeebies. I mean, this is just a very ugly market space for me. Not because of what it provides and the good work you do, but what it means. You guys look a lot like, this market space looks a lot like the internet bubble just before it burst, and it looks a lot like the security industry vendor community bubble that we had right after 9/11. My industry was filled with every garage product, every kitchen table conversation that was trying to be marketed in some way to cities and municipalities and police forces and fire departments and cybersecurity professionals like myself. It's just an amazing set of products. So I have one word of caution about your market space. Look at it closely, know your vendors, and I'll give you reasons why you should worry about your vendors. Know your vendors, and also be prepared for the idea that there's going to be lots of consolidations or a high failure ratio on small companies. So when you sign your contracts, be prepared to watch the logo change at the top of the contract and different marketing people or different terms come your way. So be very wise about your market space. That's a big security concern. So it's one of the things I try and do for my university constituents is try to help them understand the vendors they're dealing with and what it means. So you have a volatile market space. And there's lots of interesting implications to your technology. You folks want to create lots of new opportunities for yourselves, hitherto not attempted. But the idea of doing it with technology seems to appeal to you. So I want to let you know as you start cyber slinging out there with your mobile technologies and all your new interfaces on the internet and in the communities through electronic means, that you keep some of the implications I'm going to talk about in mind. Normally, like I said, I do a story. And today, I'm not going to do a story. I'm going to do a few quick cautionary tales. As a matter of fact, I decided to organize them as a road trip. We're going to go on a road trip. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to 5 address locations around the United States. These are locations that I think are interesting, worthwhile for you to see, because they teach us things, because events either took place there or are taking place there that you need to know about, because it's the paranoia food I feed off of. This is the stuff I really like talking about. By the way, you should know that Walt and other people like getting me all worked up because he likes to see me get all flustered. So you can contribute to that if you like. So the first place we're going to go is 9130 G Red Ranch Road in Columbia, Maryland. What's there? Well, that is that's the microphone. That is the location of the Columbia Triathlon Association, the CTA. This was a charitable organization that was founded around the triathlon that was famously held in the Maryland area. It has become, since 1988, probably one of the most important charitable event organizing groups or organizations in the region. All kinds of charities stem from their work. It's also the preferred charitable method or means or service agency for a lot of the government work back there. So it's quite the thing. The reason I bring it up is it's a 501c3, and 501c3s for security professionals means, as not-for-profits, they're soft targets. They're soft targets because you try to keep your administrative costs low, and typically you spend all your money on enablement technology and very little money on security and control technologies, which is reasonable. But because of that, you're considered a soft target. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that I've reviewed hacker laptops, done forensics on captured hacker materials, and they have segmented lists of preferred targets, and they segment out 501c3s or not-for-profits because they are likely soft targets. The CTA had a terrible event happen in June 2008. 2008, their systems were totally compromised by a hacker who called himself Cyber Demon. That was the name, the moniker used out in the cyber underground, the criminal underground of the internet, where data is bought and sold. People buy stolen credit cards, they buy databases, they buy all the stuff they need to do to make money and cash out the data. And by the way, if you didn't know it, there is a very large cyber underground, criminal underground. It's large. Hundreds of thousands of criminals occupy a whole set of internet capabilities, protocols, websites, and services that service the sale of illegally gained data and money cash out schemes and all kinds of stuff. An interesting guy by the name of Jack Erasmus, who lived out in the area and was a fan of the CTA, the Columbia Triathlon Association, decided he'd track down information about the event, the hack. He went out online and managed to penetrate the cyber underground and found a lot of the data from the CTA for sale. So he acquired as much of the data as he could to do an analysis of it, It's not like he could turn it back over to the CTA. They already had it, but he couldn't capture all of it. But he just bought it himself and started analyzing it. He started doing some analysis, some segmentation of the data he had. What he bought was a database with records of 9,000 people, a lot of extraordinary profile data included in it. And he noticed as he segmented out that there were a lot of government employees who worked for the Capitol Police, the FDA, NASA, FBI, Justice Department, Secret Service, the CUA, all these important federal agencies. And he also noticed that all of those user IDs, which were account IDs for the CTA services, included an encrypted password file or encrypted passwords. And of course, it's very easy to unencrypt passwords because they're not really encrypted in databases, they're just encoded. And there's very simple processes and technologies you can apply to decrypt them. So he ended up decrypting all the passwords in the 9,000 people, segmenting out the federal government stuff, and he had about 1,500 federal employees' passwords. Now, you know full well that people use the same password wherever they go. So in essence, what he thought he might have is a large percentage of U.S. employees, U.S. government employees' passwords to probably their own accounts that they use inside their government agencies. So that's saleable. He did a lot of other analysis that was quite discomforting to read about. I thought I'd bring this one up to let you know how data is surprisingly useful in the hands of evildoers who want to look for ways to make money off of it. This is exactly what a underground marketing thing might look like. This is Merritt Woodward's credit card and PIN number that was stolen from that particular CTA hack. I wanted to show it to you. He's of course got a new number, but this is what it looks like. That's Merritt Woodward's credit card number and PIN number is just an example of what's called a dump that's for sale. Usually dumps between 10, 15, 30 different account numbers and related PIN numbers. You buy them, and usually they're $30 a piece. If they're fresh, meaning the expiration date or the cycle of the billing that goes along with it is fairly early on, so that it won't be noticed. They have a couple of weeks to leverage the accounts. Anyway, I just wanted to show you what it looked like, what it looks like. These sales going on all the time. There's more money made in illegal, fraudulent transactions by organized crime now than all of the money they make in drug deals, in drugs. So it's an enormous business online. And this is kind of what it looks like if you're getting the cyber underground. You pay through Western Union, you pay through eGold. eGold is where you buy gold online and you exchange shares. So there's no way to track it. The next address I want to take you to is 2206 Thomas Drive in Panama City Beach, Florida. I want to tell you this because it's a painful tale. This is what happens when you get hacked. If you're a small organization, a large organization, when you get hacked, it's very, very painful. Half Hitch is a chain of tackle shops along the Florida Panhandle. Very interesting set of services. They do an awful lot of online service arrangements for fishing trips and for renting gear and making your perfect vacation in Florida happen if you're a fisherman. They have 4 stores along the Panhandle, and it was during the holidays between Christmas and New Year's last year when Tom Putnam, the owner of Half Hitch Tackle, was sitting down to watch one of the football games that was on, and he got a knock at the door and he opened it, and it was the Bay County Sheriff and the Panama City Police Chief standing in front of his door and said, "Mr. Putnam, we think you have a problem. We have hundreds of complaints of identity theft and financial fraud with citizens in and around this county. And the only thing we can deduce from all of these complaints about financial fraud is that they all seem to have shopped or been used service to their credit or debit cards through Half Hitch Tackle during the last year." Which turned out to be true because we immediately called his technology people. They went in and they started looking at their systems. They had been totally compromised by unknown hackers from overseas for a long time who had been neatly and cleanly taking all their credit card and debit card transactions as they occurred, online and in the stores. His pain in dealing with it was quite strong. First of all, those sheriffs, those law enforcement agencies had to notify, or took time to notify all the victims of this, that they believed the common problem that they were investigating was a problem with Tom's stores. So Tom not only started out the new year with an extraordinary headache, he started having headaches every day with customers coming in and yelling at him for not protecting their data and looking for him to help deal with restitution if the banks failed in their policy to give them the money back. By the way, bank accounts that are defrauded are not protected with a $50 limit if you use them. If you use your debit card and somebody steals your data, credit cards have a federal protection of $50, but not debit cards. Anyway, Tom not only had a problem with customers yelling at him in the store, he had to take his credit card processing systems down, both online and in-store, so they could be rebuilt. He had to hire a new technology team to come in, a consulting firm to come in and rebuild it and investigate it. He spent about $60,000 for computer forensics people to come in because the merchant bank demanded he do it. When the merchant bank found out that the people he hired weren't PCI DSS certified, payment card industry, data security standard certified people, he had to bring in a whole new batch to do it all over again. Today, Tom's in a hole about $500,000 and went 3 weeks without credit card processing. His business stumbled terribly the first half of the year, and he's still struggling to get up to speed. I tried to call him today, or earlier, not today, yesterday, so I could get an update from him, because I called him because I gave a presentation about this at one of my Agora meetings. He was struggling really hard, and he kept on telling me, tell people how bad it is when you get hacked. And he means it. The next address I want to take you to is 2710 Thomes Avenue, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this goes to the vendor community. This goes to that market space I'm telling about. At that address, in Cheyenne, Wyoming, a sleepy little town, the state capital, about 60,000 people, is this brick house, this cute little brick house. 1,700 square feet. Lady goes out on the porch and smokes there 3-4 times a day. Manicured lawn, it's about 5 blocks from the state capitol. It also happens to be the international headquarters for several thousands of international corporations, local and international. It's the headquarters building for shell corporations. Shell corporations, you can look it up and read about it. Reuters did a great expose on this. These are organizations where in certain states, particularly Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware, you can have an anonymous corporation where you never have to reveal who the owners are. And for money laundering purposes, or for hiding transactions, or for hiding acquisitions, or for stealthily trying to occupy a corporate market space, or trying to create an organization that may look older than it really is in terms of its actual function, people buy shell organizations. They buy shell companies. This place, which is called Wyoming Corporate Services, which is owned by a very strange guy, he sells shelf organization. He's created a niche, and it's made his business one of the most remarkable ones in this area that is quite troubling for people around the country, especially for guys like me, because I have to vet corporations as vendors to find out what they're like. And he has a lot of legal support and complete legal operations that you can't penetrate very well. What he does is he names a corporation. Corporations Today, he'll call something, or he'll call it Advanced System Services. He'll make up a corporate name. He'll go out and claim all the websites that you might want to name related to it. He'll put together a board of directors under Wyoming law. He'll file all the filing fees, which costs $100, and he'll hire a board of directors, which happens to often be himself, his wife, friends, and a couple of lawyer friends he knows. They'll put that entity, that legal entity that they chartered through the state, on a shelf, literally on a shelf of the post office box, and they will hold regular corporate meetings according to Wyoming law. They will write up minutes. They'll send out mailings and filings that they have to do to keep their legal entity in place. They'll have counsel, and they'll let it age. And you can go out to Wyoming Corporate Services and look at different corporations you can buy that are 3 months old, 5 months old, 10 years old, 15 years old. The older it is, the more expensive it is, but you can buy it. So if I wanted to be in a garage and build the new secret advanced software tool that's just going to revolutionize everything, I don't know if it works or not, I can just make myself look like an old sage corporation instead of Kirk Bailey's garage software. I can buy corporations today that's 15 years old or 10 years old for about $10,000, $15,000, and I can go into any of your offices and say, I have a 15-year-old company, 10-year-old company, corporations today, and I've got the best tool in the world. You know, you can read all about it. It's a very problematic area, and it's how the cyber underground chooses to launder a lot of its money is through anonymity havens like this. I suggest you go out and read about it. It's very interesting. This, I like to point out, is Graham Norris. He's a lawyer. Lawyers and I get along fine except for a few of them. He is their front man for most of the corporations. He's the corporate lawyer for some 1,500 corporations. He sells an additional service to the Wyoming Corporate Services. If you get a subpoena, if you want subpoena protection, you can pay Wyoming Corporate Services an additional $1,500 and he'll intercept all subpoenas. Law enforcement knows that. and are troubled by it because what happens if they want to serve a subpoena on a corporation to try and get to the owners, find out the name of the real owners, if they're Italian mobsters, or if they're Russian mobsters, or if they're organized crime operating out of Brazil. He's the lawyer that can accept the subpoena, and he will say to them, we will notify the ownership and to decide if they want to disclose, which is something they may not want to do, is give fair warning that they're being investigated. But this guy's very different. I thought about going to, online or talking to him, calling him on the phone, and getting to know him a little bit better, but I just didn't think I could keep a straight tone in my voice. Anyway, very interesting fellow. Be aware that those kinds of things are ongoing, and I have found them in the security industry, vendors. I recently went out to this wasn't even a security vendor. A department at the University of Washington asked me about a new product. They wanted me to go review it. So the first thing I did is I went out and I looked about its corporate structure. And I went online, and guess where they were incorporated from? Wyoming Corporate Services. They claimed to be a 5-year-old corporation. Their lawyer was this fellow. It's very common to find that kind of thing. It doesn't mean they're not legitimate. It just means that they're inflating who they are and what they can do. So the next address I'm taking to is Regent Boulevard, Irving, Texas. This is the home of Epsilon International. I'm sure many of you heard about what happened earlier in the year with Epsilon. They're a marketing firm that's been around since 1969. They're a direct marketing firm, and they're also a data broker. They're a remarkable service. They've been pretty upstanding in all the work they do. They've supported mailing services, direct marketing services for a long time, very reputable fashion. Within the last 5 years, they've taken on direct mailing as a service, and they've accrued a huge clientele of corporations that they do specific direct mailing to through email and through paper mail, but mostly through email in this particular tale of problems. And what happened with Epsilon is that they found out they had been completely compromised for an unknown period of time by hackers earlier this year, and they were aware that and the security community is a little irritated with Epsilon because normally when a bad thing happens, we can talk to colleagues inside the corporations to find out what's going on so we know what to do and how to react. Epsilon is one of those companies that just shut the door. They don't want to talk to us. So all we have is speculation and first-hand knowledge about who's been notified. But of their 2,500 business customers for direct emailings, you can see a list of the different corporations that actually sent out mailings to individuals who might have been compromised, and that included their name, full name, social security number, and mailing address. And what's bad about that, you say, well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Well, as I can tell you that as a security professional, well, you guys are professionals, separating people from their money legally. Well, it's very easy to do illegally with the same kind of communication capability. And we already know that targeted phishing attacks have already been taking place against some of these customers. We know that at least 18 million people have been contacted by different companies related to this, and these are very specific segmented populations. The airlines, for instance, took direct mailing to their Million Mile Club people. They sent out special stuff to them all the time, and those people are interesting marks and very interesting targets for people to take a whack at. So Epsilon proves that you're not too big a corporation to have problems with this kind of stuff. What I really like about Epsilon is their marketing message, their motto was, marketing as usual, not a chance. And I liked how they used to say it before this incident. They said, marketing as usual, not a chance. And afterwards it's, marketing as usual, not a chance. I like that very much. The last address I want to take you to is South Myers Road in Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois, a Chicago suburb. This is the location of Vasco, and this is probably the most disastrous story I can tell you as a security professional. This is horrible stuff. Vasco, by the way, incorporated in the state of Delaware, initially anonymously, is an authentication company. It's a security company, and they've been around since 1988. In 1990 and 2008, they successfully became a public entity. They got listed in the NASDAQ under VDSI. There's a picture of Ken Hunt, the CEO. Very happy that day. He had a big investor party the big day, and he closed the NASDAQ market, rang the bell to close it with his senior management at the time. He was very, very happy. He from that day on, after his new capital from the stock option or stock sales that he made, he went out and started acquiring all kinds of companies, tons of them. They sell user authentication tools, electronic signature and digital signature tools. They're a certificate authority. And a certificate authority is at the backbone of the trust for secured, encrypted communications on the internet. Well, one of the acquisitions they made was DigiNotar, a Dutch company, a Dutch, very well-regarded, highly regarded Dutch certificate authority. They give out digital certificates to all the big people like Amazon and Facebook and Google and Microsoft and all the big online organizations. And they give out these certificates to their machines that ensure that you have a successful encrypted transport layer communication. If you're looking in your browser and you want your donors to feel secure, you tell them to look for that little padlock in the browser, not down on the web page, because that's just a picture. But if the browser indicates it's established a secured communication, you know you're having an encrypted communication between machines through the HTTPS protocol, and usually through SSL, enabled by electronic signatures. The certificate authority would give both parties assuring that they're each other. Well, never before has a certificate authority been compromised, but the people in the Chrome group of Google were looking around in early August at their machines because they're having some trouble getting some transport layer encryption established for some of their Gmail users and some of their browser people, and they noticed they had an odd certificate that didn't match any in their registry of certificates. They couldn't figure out what was going on with that, so they started exploring further. And they realized it might be a serious problem because they had a counterfeit certificate. In other words, a machine owned a certificate that could be hijacked or present false security for people who were using the machine and the communications going on that machine. And they contacted the DigiNotar people, who discovered through pressure that they had been compromised for a very long period of time. At least 500 false certificates have been issued to all the major online service providers, which means that basically that little lock that guarantees secured communications, if that communication involved any one of these certificates. And by the way, when I say issue 500 certificates, those are replicated. Those are multiple replication certificates. It takes a long time to revoke certificates. And if you didn't issue them in the first place, blacklisting them and revoking them off machines is a very complex thing to do. It involves a lot of technical intervention. At any rate, DigiNotar had to make this sort of ugly announcement that they were no longer a trustable certificate authority, which just rocked my world. It was just a horrible event. It means that at the foundation of secure communications, you couldn't trust it. And this came on the heels of RSA being compromised and all your security tokens and the technology associated being compromised. So two of the critical tools security professionals like to share with people to having secured stuff were gone. They were just broken. We were just devastated by the news. DigiNotar had such bad problems with it. Vasco, in conjunction with the Dutch government and some people in the Commerce Department of the United States and in the United Nations, decided to shut DigiNotar down. It's out of business. Lawsuits were building. Everybody was beginning to sue. People were conducting investigations, demanding costs to review potential breaches associated with this, lost data associated with it. It's just a mess. So, and cleaning up the DigiNotar false certificates is problematic. And I don't know how long it'll be before it can be cured. But what it means to me as a security professional, I can no longer certify that the certificate authorities and their legal entity are what they say and do as they do. The state of Washington has very strict law about how you become a certificate authority. So my office is thinking about becoming our own certificate authority and seeing if the expense of ramping up very specific kinds of security measures around it for University of Washington use and its business partners might be something we want to look at. But you should know that fundamentally the marketplace has a new jeopardy, and it's a very frustrating one. So those are all the addresses of interest on the quick tour. Now I want to tell you about, just real quickly, how many other tales there might be. This year is going to be a record year for reported crimes, cyber crimes. One way to measure that is to see how many cyber crimes incidents are reported through the U.S. CERT, United States Computer Emergency Response Team that exists over in Carnegie Mellon. They're going to have a record year. There's going to be 130,000 incidents reported to them, and they represent probably about 3 to 10% of the actual number of breaches that take place in the U.S. Around the globe, there'll be, at all the different certs, there are about 40 certs in 40 countries, there's going to be well over 2.5 million reported incidences. It's a record number of compromises. So that gives you an idea how fragile the internet environment is, and something that you not ignore, but not let interfere with what you're doing. It just means you have to frame your communications and your ideas about what you want to do there with a little more caution, with a little better understanding of risk. So here's what the tales teach us. All of your data are valuable both as an asset and as a liability to more people than you might realize. As good as you are at doing segmentation of your data and your databases, you want to see what hackers do when they mark it up for sale. And it sells fast. They do incredible analysis and reverse engineering. They'll do associations online with other data that may have been stolen from your institution, or other locations subject data may have been stolen from. So it's remarkable to see. So realize that your data is an extraordinarily valuable asset, not just for yourselves, but for those who might want to get it illegitimately. Computer systems and data compromises can be very problematic and expensive. We can have Tom Putnam come talk to you about it. I try to save the university a headache. My staff is fully trained in computer forensics and network forensics and cell phone analysis. We try to be able to provide the university a very complete investigation to save them money, because one of the things we try to do is show that if a breach took place, and we have machines compromised all the time on the University of Washington campus, students bring in compromised machines. We want to be able to show definitively that even though the machine was compromised, the data wasn't. So if you're in your offices and you hear or you think your machine's compromised, it pays to have a professional security person or a forensics examiner look at it, because you may not have a problem. It just may be that the computer's compromised, which is different than the data being taken. The third thing on this list is it's very unlikely that you'll ever have a successful investigation of a cybercrime by law enforcement. I'm not dissing them. I work very hard with the U.S. Attorney's Office in several different states. I know many of the assistant U.S. attorneys locally. I know lots of the federal agents and the local law enforcement. It's just that these crimes are burdensome and very hard to investigate, because they usually involve international and cross-state parties. And that means you either have to be FBI or Secret Service, and you have to get involved with Interpol. It involves federal treaties. And so law enforcement agencies have a real problem being able to conduct the investigation. The fourth thing on this list is a little bit startling, but it's the new approach security professionals are talking about taking. It's called the assumption of breach. I can tell you that no business, institution, organization, or individual can successfully defend against a targeted attack. Our adversaries have too many skills and too many attack possibilities for us to defend data. So be aware of that, which means that you're now required to work with security people on a risk basis. Understand your risks and figure out the best and safest way to try and navigate them, as opposed to complete success. And what's interesting is this puts us in direct contrast with compliance. Compliance standards like PCI DSS, they don't work. I can't tell you how many times I've seen institutions that are fully compliant with security standards that the industry requires in the credit card issues, and they get compromised. Diminished return on this stuff. So it's a risk, it's a new risk approach. You need to build strategic advantages with your data. This is something Walt has done in spades, and his team has done in spades. You know, inventory your data, eliminate all the unnecessary data, so you save yourself the cost of a breach. If you don't need social security numbers, get rid of them. If you have extra squirreled away databases, make sure you're either using them and they're worthwhile, or get rid of them. You need to take as much data as you can offline. Don't let sticky fingers come in from the outside world touch your data. Throw it out on a separate drive. Throw it out somewhere not connected anywhere to the internet. And use encryption discreetly and carefully. Encryption is not a panacea. A lot of people say, well, we should just encrypt everything. I just want to caution you that it is not a panacea. It can be expensive and troubling, so be careful with that. But where appropriate, it makes sense, use it. Build a strong risk transfer program, since you have to assume breach, in your contracts with vendors. If your vendors are going to borrow your data, access your data, look at the data, use your data, manage it for you, whatever they're going to do, make sure you have contracts that transfer liability for the loss of that data. In this last 24 months, the University of Washington's had a number of breaches involving vendors. Vendors have lost laptops, vendors have been compromised, the university data has been compromised because of it. If we didn't have strong language in there saying, hey, you lose it, you pay, we would have had some costs unnecessarily inflicted on us. It doesn't help with the reputational piece, but it certainly helps with the immediate costs. Also, watch your privacy and online terms of use statements for your websites. Make sure they really transfer risk where appropriate back to the people using the websites. And in association with that, oh, and by the way, seek out underwriting. It's the other way of risk transfer. Buy insurance if you can afford it, and you can find a good program. Buy liability insurance in this area of cyber liability. Just buy it. It's good protection. You also should think carefully about communicating your data protection strategies and policies about your data to the donors. I don't know if that works in advancement or not. I don't know if you want to tell them how much you know and what you do with their data. I've found that when I've had to deal with angry people on the phone, when the university's lost data, and I have to handle those phone calls, candor and honesty has been a rich reward in terms of how they appreciate anything you have to say, because most of what you have to do is say is defensive. So I've often thought that maybe up front, if we communicated better what we do with the data, would be helpful. The other thing that I want you to think about is never trust technology vendors. I know in my market space they're crazy. Vendors hate me. I go after vendors. It's not that they're liars, it's just that they're marketing people. They can't help it. It had to do with their childhood. Inadequacies, I don't know. Anyway, be tough on them. Investigate them. Hire Krols. Spend some money. Make sure you're getting what you're really paying for, and have a relationship that's really sincere and long-lasting. And also monitor them. Watch what they're doing. One of the biggest problems I have is advising the university about when a company looks like it's ready for acquisition. You can kind of tell. Ask the people in those meetings when they're showing you all the fast functions and cool stuff, and they're showing how they can shoot the quarter in the air and all that kind of stuff with technology. Ask them how they have financed themselves. Find out if they're in venture capital, what level of venture capital. They're at the angel level, second round of venture capital, that kind of stuff. Go ahead and ask them. You'll be surprised to find out that there's interesting relationships that may make a difference in how you want to do business with them. Well, I'm surprised I put that slide in. I thought I had taken that one out. There's some really good advice there. Take security professionals out to lunch, chat with them. We're lonely. We go to meetings, they always get upset. Cybersecurity advice is best obtained by taking preferred cybersecurity professionals to an ideal location like St. Croix or Fiji. Those are things that you really want to consider when dealing with cybersecurity professionals. It works. So thanks. So what I did was give you some food for thought, hopefully tickled your interest, and maybe you guys have some questions you would like to chat about. Anybody got anything they want to say? Anybody want to call me a liar? Yeah?
Well, that's just a real simple thing. It's just the user. You mentioned about login names and passwords being copies. Do you have strategies for somebody who's part of using login and password and stuff?
At the university, we don't force password changes. What we always do is encourage people to change them. We advise them to pick a scheme for passwords that you can change. So a passphrase like, gosh, I love mom and her apple pie, use all capital letters, and and then say, gosh, I love mom, I love her scrambled eggs. Keep changing it on a frequent basis. That helps. And I would advise to change your website passwords, where you go to your different service websites. Keep that distinctly different than your business website or your banking websites or something like that. Keep those kinds of things different. I know it's hard. And also, I'm of the old school that says you should write your password down. You should write your passwords down, and actually they're so vulnerable now because they're usually locked away in databases and they're easy to steal, and there's sniffers on PCs now where they take passwords so easily now. Why not write it down, your different passwords, and put it in your wallet or the place right next to the dollar bills and your credit cards, because you tend not to lose those. You don't. So if somebody says it's too complicated, I say, well, write it down. Put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it someplace that's not likely to be stolen off your desk or something like that. That's a simple answer. Yeah?
You mentioned creating your own certificate of UW. Isn't that going to transfer more liability to you?
Well, in a way it does, yes. It's an issue I brought up. I searched it with my team and they about fainted because it's just a ton of work. The reason I want to do it is we're also a defense contractor, and my offices have has secured facilities to house classified documents. So we have an ideal location to store all the necessary electronic and printed materials associated with certificate authority in a professional way that helps with our insurance underwriting for that, which is what's required. I think it's also very expensive. It's very expensive to do because you have to be adopted as a certificate authority. But I just brought it up as an early warning to the staff, and it's something I'm planning to present to the university to think about, just in case things get muddled and people want deliberate, carefully secured machines that we know and have control over as an option. I'm not sure it'll go through. It will cost several $1 million to do. But it's something I felt like I should step up and talk about.
Do you have a cheat sheet of questions that we should present to vendors about security issues?
You know, I used to, I remember, specific to an advancement situation, I was invited once by Walt to help vet a vendor. And I believe, and I don't remember raising my voice at all in that. Did I raise my voice? No. I got word back that I'd been yelling at the vendor. Sure, he cried. I think that would be really good. I used to have a long list of very difficult, embarrassing questions, because if you ask a whole bunch of them, you might get some answers. I don't talk to marketing people. I talk to their technology people, and I talk to the owners if I can. I talk to the people who own this stuff, and I ask them hard questions. And I usually try and frame it in the way of partnerships. But I ask for their strategic plan. Talk to me about your strategic plan. Is this the primary market space you're in? What are your other business partners? How many people do you have in your development team? What kinds of market directions are you planning to take? Is your product, if it's a technology product, ask for how it's been reviewed, how it was built, who's looked at it, did it have a code review, how qualified were your developers in developing it? Lots of tough questions that, if you can engage in a thoughtful conversation, can yield an awful lot of good information. I ask how old their organization is. Let me tell you about this one company that I was asked to look at. So this is what I did to vet it. I had 2 days to give them a response for an RFP went out. And they wanted to know about targeted vendors. So, and it was a really strange marketplace. I hadn't been there before. So I went out and I went online to their website. I looked at their product listing, their product sets. I looked at all their contact information, saw their mailing address, looked it up on Google Earth, went to Google Earth, and then I went to Google Maps and street locations, and I looked at their world headquarters. And it was this particular company, its world headquarters, that was selling extensible software for global distribution of stuff. I mean, this really powerful sounding. They had a dirty storefront in an old strip mall in Branson, Missouri. So I called them while I was looking at the picture, and I called the number that was listed for contact information. And I got a hold of a woman. I told her who I was. I never lied. I said, I'm at the University of Washington. We're just interested in knowing more about your service, your company. And I was curious if you could tell me that your product, which you advertise, provides online transaction services, has it been approved as PCI DSS compliant? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, do you know who would know? And I said, well, there's nobody else in the office. I said, well, can I have the president of the company or a manager call me back, or office manager? Well, I am the president of the company. And she didn't know PCI DSS compliance issues. I did that. I asked her about her articles of incorporation, where she was from. It was in the state of Missouri, so it was all legitimate and all that kind of stuff. But I just looked at simple things like that. And then I asked to talk to their developer, and they seemed wise. So what I did was ask enough questions with my experience to frame a reasonable portrayal of whether they'd be a good vendor or not. The other thing you should do if you got a lot of money is hire Kroll's. If you got a big contract coming up with lots of money involved, hire a professional investigative firm to background the organization. They'll profile the investors, they'll profile the company, the president, all the C-level officers. They'll give you lots of good information, total background.
Quick question. With more and more proprietary databases moving to hosted services or the cloud, how would you kind of approach those?
Well, when the University of Washington first asked me to be involved in the negotiations for the cloud services, I debated for about a week whether to shoot myself. or do that. My wife encouraged me, well, I won't tell you what she said. It's kind of embarrassing. But we worked through it. It's perfectly fine. She's a delightful lady. Cloud's here to stay, I think. What's bad about the cloud is you think your market space is screwed up, that market space is screwed up with big capital. Here's my big complaint about cloud. I don't think it has any juice at all for earning money. It's all based now on, the biggest cloud providers are huge capitalized companies, lots of money in the bank, billions of dollars in the bank, and they're throwing all kinds of marketing and opportunities for free services or reduced cost services for cloud presence. And they can afford to build massive data enterprises all around the globe so that it does in fact provide you what they advertise. What they don't have clear in mind, and I'll cite one, Google for instance. Google makes all their money, 98% of their money, from advertising. So all their money is coming from advertising. Their interest in cloud services is using the data they acquire from the people who use those services for marketing and direct marketing or other kinds of marketing. If federal laws or international laws flowed in restricting how you can use cumulative profile data accrued over the web, saying you can't use that, then they've lost a great capability of doing marketing, and a lot of their investment goes up in the clouds. And then they're left with charging subscriptions, and all of a sudden they become a hosted service again. I don't see where the laws, the privacy laws, international privacy laws, are going to ease up. Right now in the federal government, right now in our federal government, there's 18 new privacy laws that could harm the University of Washington's ability to do business with their data right now. And by harm, I mean more compliance, lots of cost in managing those, and they're pending, they're out of committee, they're going to be voted on. And I got a lawyer watching that on my team. I think privacy laws are going to trump a lot of cloud services, so they're going to become expensive. And when they become expensive, I think there'll be some more candor and some better understanding of how to utilize cloud. In the meantime, there are reasons to use the cloud. There's good reasons to use the cloud. It's affordable, it makes sense, and it provides services that are worthwhile. But I would keep in the back of your mind that it's a risky place because it hasn't really unfolded as a stable market. Does that answer your question at all? The university's contracting with lots of cloud service providers, and we have lots of cloud subscription. People love it.
Can I ask the rationale behind having UW not having to periodically change the passwords?
Diminishing return. We have 630,000 authorized UW net IDs. If we had to manage password changes on, 750,000 or 2/3 of a million passwords, it's a diminishing return in terms of administrative cost. Right now, all of the compromises, right now I'd say 80% of the compromises are coming through non-traditional methods. They're coming through the browser and through user social engineering. They're coming through mistakes made by users and browsers. All of that bypasses passwords. Matter of fact, passwords, there's the case to be made that passwords are dangerous now. And there's several people in the security community debating this. The cost of maintaining passwords as an authentication mechanism doesn't make much sense. And there's good reasons for it. I won't get into it now, but you can actually go online and look up password debate or passwords and look up some of the, try and find, you'll find some interesting, important people in the security community saying, no, we shouldn't do them, you shouldn't use them anymore. I can tell you that 80% of home computers are compromised with some form of unwelcome software. We know that from actual surveys that are made by places like AOL or Best Buy. 80% of home computers are compromised, and of that, 15 or 20% are compromised with keystroke logging and actual remote monitoring software, which captures passwords anyway. So changing the passwords doesn't protect against that kind of presence. So it's an interesting question. The university has decided it's not necessary. Although, let me tell you, every time I sit down with a system administrator, I'll say, for God's sakes, change your passwords. But we don't make it a policy because it's too much to enforce. It's that balance.
So what's the next solution?
The next solution?
Yeah, you're talking like, I know we require our physicians to do a thumbprint authentication.
He's talking about biometrics for authentication. The trouble with biometrics is that it sounds great, it's delicious, it's like encryption. It's a very dangerous technology that doesn't really fulfill its mission. For instance, the minute you swipe your finger or your thumb multiple times, it's creating a digital file. You can steal digital files. If you steal the digital file, that means they can use it I'll give you a really interesting quick story. The University of Washington Police Department, because of all the different Homeland Security grants that came through, acquired through a Homeland Security grant new fingerprinting machines for its police department for in the field, digitally certified fingerprints. I never saw it, didn't hear about it until I got a call from the police chief who said, I think some of our stuff's compromised. So we went down there, and there was this wreck, this garage, a piece of crap, set of technology built on old platforms with no protections, and they had it hooked up to the internet, and it was compromised. Well, duh. I mean, it's just, they go, hot damn, we can do fingerprints. Well, it was compromised. And when you register fingerprints in the police department, you have a fill-out section that puts in your name, the name of the suspect, the name of the arrestee, the name of the employee, whatever, and their social security number, all kinds of horrible stuff. So I'm pulling my hair and I'm looking at this cheap piece of crap that's being distributed to lots of police departments, and I'm looking at a breach of Washington State breach notification law of all the different people who had registered on it so far. Thank God it was only a few hundred. But I was looking at it and I saw that we had to notify people related to loss of social security number. And so I was telling the police chief this, and then I was looking at it, thinking it, and I said, you know what else they took? They took the digital files of those people's fingerprints. So I immediately called the assistant U.S. attorney and I said, and I also called the Rob McKenna's office, the state attorney general's office, said, do we have to let people know if their digital fingerprints are stolen? And the reason I called the U.S. attorney's office is with $15 worth of software, some new printers they have out there, and some gummy bears, you can make replicas of people's fingerprints. You can stick them on your finger, and you can walk and leave fingerprints at murder scenes, or robbery scenes if you wanted to. So the question to them was, does that mean that when you notify them, and they're criminals because they're being logged in the police department, does that mean that fingerprints, they're inoculated from further potential prosecution with fingerprint evidence because they'll have a letter from the University of Washington saying, my digital fingerprints were stolen and could be used and replicated anywhere. This is the digital world I live in. So while it was still compromised, I had them log in my fingerprints, and so I could. But it's interesting. So right away, I thought, and I used to be the head of security for the city of Seattle, which is hooked to the county systems and the state systems for the APHIS systems, which is the fingerprint systems. And we looked through that to see what it might mean in terms of compromise and what it might mean for digitalizing fingerprints. So biometrics are dangerous because once they steal your biometric, once you give your biometric up, it's just another data file. And it's easily replicated and cheated.
With all the security issues at hand, what's your opinion on, I think that there should be two-factor authentication when you're accessing systems. What would be some of the ones that to keep in the front line as you're considering two-factor authentication pieces?
Cheap ones. I'd use cheap ones. I used to think that others were better, but since RSA got hacked, I can tell you RSA produces those two-factor tokens that you have to key in an extra number. Since they were hacked and all of their intellectual property was stolen, at least 5 major defense contractors have been compromised by cloned, weaponized intellectual property of those digital things. So RSA is an interesting problem. Now they've revised their stuff and they're reissuing and they're sending out new tokens and all of that. But it was a lesson to be learned about whether you want to use an expensive one or a cheap one. And two-factor, there's 3 things you can authenticate with: something you know, something you are, and something you have. Something you are is biometrics. I'm not a big fan of that, but you can use that. Something you have is a token, like what you're talking about. If I were you, I would look at what makes sense financially, as enough, it's extensible enough for your population of users, and make it as cheap and as easy to use as possible. Because that alone will be enough to thwart the online monitoring of your passwords.
What is your guidance on transporting data internally within the district?
Well, it depends upon how open you are. At the University of Washington, we have wide open networks. We are the internet. We have policy that suggests that when you're sending critical data, confidential data, it should be encrypted between machines. And I would and that's a simple set of protocols technicians can set up with certificates, machine certificates, and we use those liberally throughout the university. So I would suggest if it's confidential data you care about, you should ensure that it's going between machines in an encrypted fashion, in a tunnel fashion. VPNs are good as well.
Yeah, we're using a program called Phone Factor, my network engineer got, and I'm just curious if you ever heard of it. Essentially, when I go to VPNN, he has programmed in my telephone number, and I have to then answer the phone and put in another password before it'll let in.
I've seen it. What I'm worried about with all these new phone apps is a couple of weeks ago, the Computer Chaos Club finished up in New York, or in Germany. That's a big hacker convention in Germany. It's been going on for years. And several of my colleagues go hang out. It's kind of a crazy party. And when they came back, we debriefed. When they were finished with their hangovers and their legal issues, they sat down and got through customs and stuff like that. So one of the things that was highlighted there was phone apps, especially iPhone stuff. That's a very free closed market, a very free-form closed market. They say they vet, and Androids too, the Android phone. There's a lot of exciting security products that are actually out there that are actually malware. So that means software they want you to download for security purposes, which makes your phone a botnet or for complete monitoring. You do not want your smartphone compromised because that gives them GPS location information about, boy, it's just everything. They can turn on the microphone and listen to everything you're doing. They can track where you're going. They can listen to your phone calls. They can look at your text messages, your phones. So they were trying to give me a list. What we want to get is a list of applications because Apple won't do it. Android won't do it. Nobody will do it. We're trying to get, and I even got asked about it earlier today, trying to get together a list of apps that we want to be careful about, especially security ones like that. Now, my team uses an app similar to that for authenticating that they vetted. They took apart and looked at, and they use it as a test, and it works pretty cool. I mean, I know why your technician was interested in it. Be careful of the flashlight apps. There's 60 of them out there. 6 of the flashlight apps are nothing more than malware, deliberately designed to take over your iPhone.
Is there a list somewhere?
No. You got to go to Germany and party. You do. And it's not a bad gig. So we're getting really close to your social hour. Are there any more questions? Yeah?
Earlier you were talking about when you researched a company, you found out it was at this address in Cheyenne.
Yes.
And you said that doesn't necessarily mean that they're dishonest, but why would
well, they would buy... I'm not an expert in investment.
Sure.
Angel investors have called me in the past to come vet ideas with them. You know, they sit me down in front of these crazy inventors, and they look at me and say, "Is that going to be safe?" And I go, "Hell, I don't know. I can't even understand." Anyway, but I have had beers with them afterwards, and they've talked about angel investment. Angel investors and other kinds of venture capitalists work very hard at structuring investments to guide some of their investments to ward off competitive views that may surface, so they don't know if they're in a competitive market space. They try to hide it. There are a lot of legitimate reasons for anonymizing your corporate structure. And I didn't want to diss the legitimate stuff, but it's a clue. If it's an anonymously incorporated entity, you got to wonder why. And that's why the conversation's about where you are in your venture capital stuff. And if they're very competitive, you should also know they're probably building for, and they have a lot of venture capital, they're building for acquisition. I can't tell you how many times I've watched people I've worked with about security issues watch their whole perception of who they're dealing with change when they sign contracts and then they get bought out by another firm. It happens all the time. Anything else? I need to go take my pills.